Hey guys, welcome back. So for this one, we are getting back into Immortal Thor, where at this time, Thor, he's punching above his weight class, and he's got to figure something out. So now we reach the point where we find Thor crafting a new solution, with a little bit of help from Loki. So with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications, so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping back into Immortal Thor, we pick up from right off the heels of our last talk when Thor Odinson was confronted by Thanos, the Utgard Thor, who was clearly way too powerful for him to face, so he had to get a little clever with it and uses all power to part the sky and send Thanos into the yawning void, which, like we saw, this wasn't a permanent solution. So going forward, Thor's aware that Thanos could return from the void at any moment and wreak havoc wherever he finds Thor at, which is why from here we saw the exhausted Odinson make his way to the gray area of the moon, with hopes of him being able to go into the All-Sleep instead of staying on Midgard or going to Asgard, where Thanos would undoubtedly follow. And the last thing that we saw at this time was Loki make his way there to first reassure that he had Thor's trust in his loyalty, as well as in Loki as a sibling and an enemy, which from there gave Loki the confirmation that he can get started on doing what he needs to do, which for Thor, much like us on the outside looking in, it's a mystery to him. But it starts to make more sense as we watch this story unfold, because when we come back, we see Thor in the All-Sleep, falling, and along the way, he can hear the mocking laugh of Loki, who is the trickster and the tellsmith. And after some time, we see Thor wake up, and with a full beard that initially he's not thinking about because he's still trying to figure out where exactly he's at. But it isn't long before he feels his face and it comes to his attention that he has been asleep for a long time, and as it stands, with him not knowing where he is and not another soul in sight, he has no way of telling how long he was in the All-Sleep. And the only thing that he is certain about is that he did sleep, because even now he feels his strength restored. And so naturally, from here, Thor starts flipping out, because he's just like, man, I gotta get back. There's no telling if Thanos has returned to either Midgard or Asgard, or if Thanos is out there just tearing up alien worlds looking for him. But just before Thor takes off, Loki shows up. So right away, Thor just lets Loki know that he doesn't have the time or the patience for any games. So Loki tells him that this is no game, but there are rules nonetheless, because what Loki's doing here, he's playing the part of the villain. And it's one of those things where for Thor, it's hard to tell if Loki's truly being malicious, if he's doing this for some sort of gain, or if he's doing this purely for his own amusement. Thor can't really be sure, because for Loki at some point in time, the answer has been yes to all of those. And as Loki goes on to explain, he lets Thor know that he's bound here to this place by way of the magic of his staff, to the rune Rito, the rune of journeys, but the rune is reversed, which as a result changes the meaning of that rune to unwanted journey, or plans disrupted, or the inverse rune can even be interpreted as the rune of crisis. So basically what Loki's saying is that Thor can't just open the Bifrost and get out of here, and Thor can sense the truth in that, so he just takes off, and he's like, bump it, I'll just fly back. But when he goes up above the clouds and looks out into the stars, he doesn't recognize any of them. The patterns are unfamiliar, and it's almost like he's looking at a completely different universe. So on one hand, Thor sees the bright side, because it's unlikely that Thanos would find him here, but on the other hand, if he were to try to fly back to Earth or back to Asgard, even if he moved at full speed, it would take millennia. So it causes Thor to come to the realization that he's gonna have to work this thing out with Loki. He's gotta figure this out if he's gonna get back anytime relatively soon. And when Thor descends back down, he finds that Loki's turned a bunch of rocks into this huge feast, with Loki more or less telling him like, here's your lunch, because after all, a good jailer should keep their prisoner fed. Which right there, that just causes Thor to go off, because he refuses to be anyone's prisoner. So Loki just tells Thor, fine, have it your way. You won't break bread, then you can stew. I furnished you with every clue. So now I take my leave of you with the flip of a rune and toodaloo. And just like that, Loki's gone, leaving Thor alone here with his rage. Because right now, Thor just has the worst scenarios playing through his mind of what Thanos could be doing, either to the people of Midgard or the people of Asgard. So Thor lashes out and he just takes it out on the land. So moments later after he cools down, After Thor is done with all the metaphorical kicking and screaming, he looks down at what he's turned this place into, and how it was once a beautiful garden, but now it's only just a bedrock of crystals. And not just that, but he realizes that the lashing out hasn't gotten him any closer to getting out of here. So he comes up with the idea of just putting himself to work, because he just figures if Odin was here, that's the punishment he would have gave him. And also it's a good way for him to clear his mind, so he can figure out what his next steps are going to be. And as it turns out, in Thor's huge fit of rage, he just happened to make this table that was perfectly flat. So he uses it to take his helmet and recraft it into a new hammer by using lightning to heat it up, Mjolnir to reshape it, and just after that he calls for the rain to cool it back down. Which is pretty cool to see. I'm just not over how perfect that table was to begin with. And I mean, he might have just hammered around it, who knows. But as it turns out, this new hammer that he's crafted, it almost looks like your classic Stormbreaker, just instead of it being round in the middle, it's more of a cylinder shape, and it's also your 2-in-1 axe and hammer, which we end up seeing Thor put to use rather quickly here. But before he does, he gives it a name. He calls it Tormod, and he says to solve Loki's riddle, his mind must be as keen as the axe head. And then he uses it just to give himself a shave, and it's right here where we find that Loki's been peeping in and keeping an eye on Thor, because right away he pops up believing that Thor was gonna do something a bit extreme since he saw him holding this huge blade to his neck, which in a way it's Loki saying, don't do anything crazy, this isn't an illusion, like you're actually here. But also with Thor seeing Loki, he tells him to keep still for a second, just so he can chuck Mjolnir at his head. And it's not so much that Thor would need Loki to stand still to do that, but it's more in the tone of like, stand right there, let me see something real quick. But instead of Mjolnir just taking Loki's head clean off, he just pops in the butterflies and comes right back, only to tell Thor that getting out of here isn't gonna be that easy. And Loki just goes back to the whole death thing, like go ahead, try it. Are you not the king of Asgard? Hero of 1,000 battles? Like surely if he takes himself out, he's going to Valhalla. But why stop there? You're Thor. You go to Valhalla, you can walk out, right? Like go ahead, try it, go ahead. And I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but Loki is being very heavy on the sarcasm right now. And as we know in the case of Thor, that wasn't even what he was thinking about. But while Loki is here, Thor does try a few different things to get out. Because first he tried going for the head, and next he calls back Mjolnir to break the rune, so that in theory, both him and Loki will be stuck here. Only if there's truly no other way out. But this doesn't work either, because the rune just reconstructs. And so Loki more or less tells him, nice shot, but that ain't it. And as Loki leaves again, he tells Thor, the tools are in your hands. He strikes the ground with the stick again, and Loki's gone. And really it's here where Thor gets an idea. Because not too long ago, he swore to Loki that he trusted him, even as his enemy. And one of the main reasons why is because even when Loki's in villain mode, there's still a fairness to him. Every taunt that Loki gives is a clue, so he takes a look at the rune that's left by Loki, and Thor gets to work on what he believes is the solution, or better yet the answer to Loki's riddle. So the first thing that Thor does is he heads over to the woods, just outside of the crystallized area that he created, so that he can make a handle for Tormod. And right after that, he then puts a spell on the axe hammer, so that when he throws it, it'll return to him much like Mjolnir. And for a moment, we're also reminded that Thor's able to do this because he's the All King. So much like his father Odin, enchanting weapons is just one of the perks of the throne. So next, he cuts down a tree, and he uses it to carve a staff just like Loki's, with the Rido rune on it. Cause also Thor noticed, when Loki appeared to him here, each time he would pop up behind Thor, but when he left, he made sure to do that in front of Thor, where Loki's exit could be seen. And as soon as Thor's done, Loki appears, towering over him, telling him how he's a fool for even trying this method, and how he's failed his test, but he's gonna show him mercy and offer Thor one last chance to live, but only if he hands over the throne of Asgard and gives Loki the role of Allfather. But really it's here where Thor just breaks it all down, because he tells Loki that he was questioning himself at first, but he knows even with Loki playing the role of his enemy, Loki still wants Thor to succeed. And if there's anything that he's learned over the years about Loki, after all that they've been through, he's learned that any Loki who says that they want the throne is a liar. So he tells Loki the riddle is solved, the tale is over, as he slams down the rune while saying Rido, rune of journeys, take me home. And just like that, the two of them are transported back to the gray area of the moon. And as Thor looks up at the stars, he notices that they're in the same exact place that he left them, which means this whole time that Loki had Thor in his wilderness, it allowed him to get his Odin sleep for as long as he needed, without losing any time here. And also, like we talked about in the last video, This whole thing is just Loki preparing Thor for what's to come. And that's why even now, when Thor raises his voice at Loki, asking him what did he mean by this game, and Loki just tells him the truth. It's no game. You had a lesson, you learned it. You needed a weapon for what's coming, you have it. You were tested, you passed. Which then has Thor like, okay, well what would have happened if I failed? And Loki's just like, yep, well you just would have stayed there and died. Starved bones on an alien world in a forgotten time, while Thanos would just wreak havoc over us all. So now going forward, Thor acknowledges that he's learned a valuable lesson. And he's like, sure, Loki's playing a game with stakes, but a game with stakes is still a game. But also Thor realizes that he won't be able to win this fight off of his strength and his power alone. But he's got to be smart, and he's going to need allies who share the necessary experience for what comes next. And as they head out, he tells Loki that he's not sure if one of these allies would be happy to see a Loki at her doorstep, asking her to join the battle. So for that reason, Thor says he's going alone to see the goddess of thunder, cause Thor's going to recruit Storm, which now just gives us a taste of how crazy this team's finna be. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.